I did. So good.
No one got my one about the yellow jumper.
I think that one got caught in our collective spam filter. I don't find that appealing. See what I did there? No? No? Terrible. All right, good morning, council colleagues. It is the 831st round of council meetings, and of course this morning from 9:15 a.m. we have the Lifestyle and Community Committee, the finest of all committees in my very humble view. Councillors, let's take a quick preview of the agenda before we turn to our welcomes. We have our confirmation of minutes, conflict of interest declarations, a proposed agenda items for the Lifestyle and Community Committee, local area works program additions, and our facilities contributions. The City of Gold Coast Youth Program 2027. Looking forward to that one, and we've got some presenters with us. A review of our biosecurity programs, a statutory requirement for us to review that. The Labrador foreshore upgrade investigation. And what else do we have? I think that is about it, apart from a general business item to, well, you'll like this one. It actually undoes an earlier general business item. So we're clearing the decks on that one. Yes. I know, it's good. All right, happy days. So attendance and apologies, I haven't received any, so I think we can deal with that one effectively as a start item, or just to leave it. Leaves of absence, none. Confirmation of minutes. Councillors, were there any questions on that item, 3.1? No, so we can start that item. Conflicts of interest. No, happy days. Proposed agenda items, that's 5.1. Councillors, any questions on that? No, it can remain as a start item. Local area works program additions, we're going to unstar. Councillor Gates has a proposed change to that one. Youth program, we will start, no, just joking. Because star means we kind of skip over debate, but no, we'll leave that unstarred there, team. Biosecurity programs 2022 through 23. I'm happy to leave it as starred, but I know it is close to your heart, Councillor Tozer, so did you wish to unstar that? Yep, beautiful. So we'll unstar 6.3. Labrador foreshore upgrade investigation, we will leave unstarred. There are no closed session reports and presentations today because we run an open and transparent committee, and we have one general business item, which we'll get to toward the end of the meeting. Councillors, was there an appetite to move the start items? Yep, Councillor Tozer, seconded Councillor O'Neill. Councillors, I will put that to a vote. All those in favour? All those against? That is carried. All good? All good? Happy days. All right. 6.2. Councillors, as you know, the city's undergoing, in fact, the state and the nation's undergoing a bit of a demographic shift. Even Councillor Belden Lumsden provided some commentary on the... Yeah, sorry, Councillor Gates.
We started.
Ah, right. My apologies.
Sorry.
Yeah, well spotted. Sorry, false start. How's the adrenaline running, guys? My mistake, I checked it off here, but then I turned my attention to the printed one there. So, Councillor Gates.
I know we're all eager to get to the youth,
future.
But yeah, absolutely.
Who's chairing this meeting? Walk us through.
Chairman, I'll be very brief, but I had issued a request to Parks last November asking for $10,000 to be allocated out of this year's budget for some extra soil investigations in regard to a shared shade sale that I'm contributing to, along with a parks investment for the next financial year, and it didn't go through. So this is just an amendment which I've sent through to ensure that the $10,000 that was additional comes from this year's budget rather than next.
Awesome.
And I was hoping to have that added as an addition to attachment 1 of 6.1, please.
All right, so I'm happy to move that with the addition. Councillor Gates, happy to second it?
Thank you.
Wonderful. That the additions listed in attachment 1 be approved. That the additions listed in attachment 1. If that's the recommendation, does that hoover up the fact that we're endorsing an existing attachment? So the additions listed in attachment 1 be approved. But shouldn't we reference the fact that you're tabling?
So the amended
Yes. Additions listed in the
by
amended
committee.
attachment 1.
to include something.
Yeah.
Yep.
And have you added, sorry to talk
please.
across the chamber, but have you added this to the amendment? Otherwise, we need to identify that it included an additional $10,000 for O'Reilly Park.
So, Councillor Gates, the printout that you have, is that how it should appear?
I had this prepared to add to what was existing within the agenda, and I forwarded it to the
Okay.
minute secretary.
So how about we write that the additions listed in Amendment 1, together with the tabled addendum, be approved for the 2022-23 LAW program. And then, would you like to walk that over?
They have it
They have a
by
copy.
email.
Awesome.
Yep.
So to our junior council representatives, words matter, right? Words absolutely matter. With the tabled addendum, yeah.
Thank you.
Brilliant. So we've got a pretty solid program there. Councillor Gates did raise with me prior to the meeting an item included in the schedule, which is a proposed embellishment of the Frascott Dog Park agility area. I just want to flag with city officers that the genesis of that program came about through a response to some health issues that dogs had encountered in that dog park, as well as feedback through my divisional budget consultation. Happy to field any questions on it, but I'm pretty excited about the prospect of bringing in a splash pad into a dog park for the first time, in particular to try and reduce some of the demand that we have on our off-leash dog beaches elsewhere in the city, because a lot of people in suburban areas are travelling to the coast to try and cool down their dogs during the heat of summer. If we can provide some of those facilities closer to home, we can reduce demand there, but also hopefully secure some more positive health outcomes. We've had parvo and all sorts of things spread. As I said, happy to take any questions on it. There's a considerable amount of money, but importantly, that money does not just deliver that water splash area, but also extra shade and seating. Councillor O'Neill.
Thanks, Chair. Does that work like the water play areas for kids? Is that how it works, or what?
It is far less spectacular. There is one that's been delivered in Logan at Flagstone, which is like a new master planned suburb. And effectively what it is a concave concrete slab with a drain in the middle and almost like a beach shower mechanism. So you press a button and for a minute or two, you have water come up through the splash pad and then it drains out. And it effectively lets dogs cool down. The problem we have at Frascott Park, and I'm sure many of you would encounter this in your own local dog parks, is to provide that same sort of amenity. People are going to Bunnings and they're getting these clamshell swimming pool type things. They're filling it up with water from a tap, leaving it in the park. That kills off the turf underneath. dogs sometimes defecate or get really dirty in that water, and then other dogs will come along and lap that water up and get terribly sick. Local law then have to intervene. They've had to remove these things. Vets get involved, complaints get made to council. This will provide the same sort of amenity, but it'll be much more hygienic.
Okay. So it's
Councillor
recycled
Jones.
water? Is it using recycled, sorry, just one more question, is it using recycled water?
City officers will look at both options, but I expect initially it will be potable to begin with.
Okay.
So, Councillor Boyce, I assume that it's mechanical in regards to the pumping of water?
That's right.
Yeah. So, in the report, it talks about the ongoing additional annual operation and costs of being $4,000. And then on the preceding page, in regards to the allocation of a park shelter for Nicofridi's family park and including a picnic setting, it talks about $6,400 worth of annual ongoing costs. And so the question probably isn't to you, but to the administration of the director. How can a shade structure operational cost be $6,400 and a mechanical pumping of water be cheaper?
Oh, sorry, maybe I misunderstood your initial question. So what do you mean by mechanical? You expect like an
There's
electric
a
pump?
to get water.
No. So from my understanding of the way that the flagstone feature operates, it's much like a beach shower. So it's just a water supply to a metre.
Right.
And then you press the button and the underlying water pressure.
Okay, right, yeah.
Yeah. And I think those costs deal with the asset renewal costs over time. So I'd probably say the life of the concrete slab is longer than a picnic shelter. Yeah?
Yes.
Yeah. Sorry, I misunderstood on the pump. I'm feeling under the pump presently. Awesome, councillors. I'll put that to a vote. Unless there are speakers against, any further questions? No? Yeah, please.
When it's in with everything else, I'm going to support it, but I guess my concern when I looked at it was if we all put one in each of our divisions, we'd be spending a lot of money on something for dogs when there's it's cost of living pressures are huge right across the city. So I kind of have a reluctance to support, but I'm trusting in your advice that you've had strong consultation and feedback from your community and you know what's best in that location.
Yeah, and look, thanks, Councillor Gates. I mean, cost of living is such a huge pressure, and I could probably delete half of the pet projects that I see come up through council if we wanted to bring rates to zero or even take a step back. But I think we're a city that takes steps forward, and the feedback from my community, and in particular the small dog area Frascott community, is that this is something that they value. It deals with a health and safety risk, and I think there will be no need to deliver one in each division because I think this will serve a catchment much larger than Division 11, in the same way that dog beaches presently serve members of my own community. I think people will be prepared to travel across boundaries to enjoy it. Councillor Owen Jones?
So, Chair, if you were to spend a Saturday at the Palm Beach Beach Park, for example,
With Ruby, for example.
residents for advice, you think that a stretch across from Frascott all the way to the southern Gold Coast?
Is the question, would residents in Palm Beach, for example, benefit from this? I think only so far as it might lessen demand for people travelling from western suburbs to travel to the dog beach. And I'm mindful that with the amount of infill development that we're pursuing, a lot of people no longer have backyards where they can spray the dog under the
Is there enough
sprinkler.
parking at Frascott Park to deal with pressure from people coming from Palm Beach to there?
Shortly after my election, the City of Gold Coast were kind enough to support another LAW contribution, which tripled the amount of car parking at Frascott Park.
Glorious.
Glorious.
It's a good park. So good. Anyway. All right. Well,
And contributed in the budget yesterday as well.
Classic.
It's relevant.
She's talking about Cam though.
It was a parting gift.
Awesome.
Might be a few, don't worry. I'll just keep dishing him out.
Classic. All right, councillors, I'll put that to a vote. All those in favour? All those against? That is carried. And thank you, Councillor Gates, for drawing our attention to 6.1, which was unstarred. All right, happy days. All right, back to the youth plan theme. Look, councillors, it should be no surprise to all of us that nationally and at a state level and even within our city, we are undergoing quite a seismic shift in the demographic makeup. Councillor Baildon Lumsden provided some commentary about this on his Facebook page, which I noted with some interest. And I think it made me very alert to the fact that young people perhaps have the greatest stake in the future of our city, and it's important that they get included in the way that decisions are made. For some time, our city officers have been working to develop a new youth plan. They've done an exceptional job, and although interrupted in part by one CP, what they have done is also engaged with the team responsible for our corporate planning and performance and the Office of the CEO, working together and under the direction, of course, with our director to make sure that we have a new program that is fit for purpose and can slot in nicely to the way that the city and its decisions will be governed moving forward. This is very, very, very exciting for us because delivery of this program will ensure that we have a city that's fit for purpose for the residents who will take up leadership positions and sort of steward the city in years to come. Rather than having city officers deliver the substance of the presentation, I thought it may be a great opportunity to invite our junior council to walk us through the process, because all of this is about them. Without further ado, Ethan, I'll leave you to do the introductions for you and your team.
Thank you. So good morning, Chair, councillors. My name is Ethan Burden. I'm joined by my fellow junior council member, Abby Stapleton. We're very pleased to be here today to support the proposed City of Gold Coast 2027 Youth Program Committee agenda item. We're very fortunate to live in a city that not only has kilometres of beaches and amazing facilities and programs for young people, but also a council that really cares and values its young people. The 2027 Youth Program demonstrates the city's commitment to finding new ways to improve access to experiences for young people. It looks at innovative ways to get us around the Gold Coast. It finds ways to celebrate the contribution we make to our city, and also strategically considers our future needs. We are aware that the city works in partnership with all levels of government, the Gold Coast Youth Service Network and local services to support the needs of the city's young people. I heard firsthand about the many services, schools and organisations that support such a diverse group of young people living on the Gold Coast through my recent attendance at the Gold Coast Youth Service Network meeting. It is great to see a program of works that shapes how the city, over the next 4 years, will support young people through delivering programs, initiatives, and providing spaces and places for young people to meet and opportunities for them to learn, grow, and thrive in the future.
Something that is important to us as young people is having chances to be in the room where decision makers are and to be exposed to opportunities for our voices to be heard. Along with fellow junior councillors, Ethan and I have had many opportunities in our time with the Junior Council program to be involved in the consultation process for city strategies, including the council plan, city's transport strategy, sport and physical activity strategy, and most recently, the youth program. Earlier this year, we were also invited to participate in a conversation around the Gold Coast legacy outcomes for the 2032 Olympic Games through attendance at a Brisbane forum, and most recently had the opportunity to meet with the 2032 Board of Directors during their visit to the Gold Coast. All of these amazing experiences would not have been possible without the city's commitment to its young people and programs like Junior Council. The 2027 Youth Program shows that opinions matter and that they have been considered. You can see on the slide that we have highlighted a selection of initiatives that are a part of the proposed 2027 Youth Program that we are particularly excited about. Firstly, the development of an online and physical resource for Gold Coast young people that provides local support services and 24/7 crisis contacts. This is of particular importance, especially given the number of our peers and the prevalence of mental health in our community. We are thankful to the Council that this has been prioritised. We also acknowledge the breadth of employment opportunities available at the City of Gold Coast and are excited to see those opportunities expanded for young people. With the excitement building around the 2032 Games, it is great to see that there will be a continued focus on Gold Coast legacy outcomes. Also, one of the significant issues raised through consultation has been the way in which young people receive information. So to see an action linked to us as an audience for future marketing initiatives is exciting to hear. As we have previously said, we are proud that the City continues to value our voices and the ongoing commitment to the Junior Council program.
We would now like to draw your attention to the screens. We have a short video to play which showcases the opportunities for young people living on the Gold Coast. The consultation for the youth program began in 2022, so you will note that our peers from the 2022 Junior Council Executive are featured in the video. We'd like to acknowledge their contribution and we agree with their comments.
There are many reasons why I love living on the Gold Coast.
I enjoy everything about living on the Gold Coast. It's the lifestyle combined with the opportunities.
Because we're surrounded by beautiful beaches and just a really nice lifestyle.
I love the access to nature, that I can go out for walks. It's the perfect spot for me.
The Gold Coast offers lots of opportunities and experiences for young people today.
From university options to lifestyle choices.
You can walk 20 minutes down the road and go to a library, or there's art galleries and theatres, and then there's all the cafes that you can go and see local music, and it's just so diverse, there's something for everyone.
I think there's more opportunities here in terms of jobs, in terms of making friends, living kind of like a relaxed but also professional lifestyle.
I've seen the city's commitment to young people and the development into the future.
I think the young people are really important because we are the leaders of the next generation.
I see the Gold Coast as a space for opportunity. I think the Gold Coast is the home of the youth, really, and I wish a lot more people knew about what's offered here for younger people.
I feel safe and comfortable to move around the city, and I think that it's really important that I have places to go to have fun with my friends.
I believe that the Gold Coast is doing a great job with promoting technology and having a smart, skilled and savvy approach.
In 5 years' time, I'd love to see the Gold Coast continue to grow the way it has been growing.
I'd like to see the Gold Coast become a hub for professional development, people at all stages of their careers.
As a young person, the opportunities are endless, and the education here, it's great.
There actually are opportunities here, and I can say I'd be proud to be a part of that. If you really care about growing or learning, then the Gold Coast is the place to be.
Oh, good. In closing, we want to share some of our thoughts about why the program is important to us. We feel the program demonstrates that the city has listened to its young people and considers their needs. And it also demonstrates the city's commitment to its young people by valuing, advocating for, and celebrating us. We are satisfied that the program considers the experiences and opinions of not only the Junior Council, but the diverse youth demographic of the Gold Coast. We thank you for your time today and allowing us the experience to be part of today's meeting. We are optimistic that the 2027 youth program will receive your endorsement today and that together we can continue to aspire to be a city that is rich in inclusivity and decision making. To finish up, I'd like to end with a quote by Benjamin Franklin. "Tell me and I forget, teach me and I remember, involve me and I learn." Thank you again, councillors, for your time today and your commitment in supporting local young people. Thank you.
Ethan and Abby, thank you so much for your presentation today. And if I could ask you to do one thing, apart from just staying behind for some media later. And that is, would you mind sharing a little bit about your experience with the rest of the Junior Council? I know the Mayor, when he has an opportunity to speak with you all, often says his door is open and the door of the Council is open. Hopefully today you can reflect on the fact it has genuinely been open to you and you've had an opportunity to shape the decisions that are made here in this chamber, which will ultimately shape the city. You've had real impact today. So please take that message back to the Junior Council and perhaps encourage other participants in the program to lean into the opportunities that this plan might deliver.
Yeah, definitely. Yes, good. I guess for me, the great thing about the Junior Council is, number one, the networking connections with young people who care about council, but also the fact that council is getting involved with young people. I find there's a level of disconnect from young people to council. A lot of young people look towards state or federal parliament and sort of overlook their local councillor or the city on the Gold Coast standpoint, Gold Coast City, which actually really affects them more. So to be around such a diverse group of young people that cares about their division, their local communities, and making positive change in their community and connecting with the councillors is something really special. So.
Awesome. That's good stuff. Thanks, Ethan. Abby?
I was actually saying this to Kerry before. I think one of the great things about the Junior Council is how we get to be involved in making things like the youth program happen, and we get to see what our concerns are and how they can create actions that impact so many people for right now, it's for the next 4 years, but it continues to happen. And I think that's one of the amazing things. And I was talking about how it's so great to get involved in sharing that with people and making sure they're aware of what is offered to them, because I feel like that is usually the downfall of these plans, is that they aren't communicated with the people that are affected by them. So I was saying to Kerry that one of the great things that is going to be about this is how we market this to make sure that people are aware of all the amazing things that the council does offer, so that people can get involved and can actually use these to their advantage.
Awesome. That's great. Thanks, Abby. Thanks, Ethan. Again, really appreciate it. Wonderful. And if you wouldn't mind hanging around for a little bit longer, that'd be appreciated, guys. Councillors, we now have an opportunity to ask any questions of city officers who have been obviously instrumental in putting together this new program. Before doing so, I just wanted to reflect on page 44 of the agenda, which was quite extraordinary to me. And it shows by 2041, the top 5 areas of projected population for people aged between 12 and 24. You look at Coomera, and the projected population of young people in Coomera will be 17,900, just in one suburb. Upper Coomera and Willowvale, 10,100. Pimpama, 8,800. Southport, 7,100. And Ormo Yatala, 7,000. I mean, that's just extraordinary numbers in single suburbs. But when you look at it in a map, you can obviously see that young people will take up residency in the north of the city. That is just really remarkable. And the reason why I wanted to reflect on that is when I had an opportunity to sit with city officers and these young people, one of the dominant themes that they talked about was around transport and being able to get to facilities, services, friends and job opportunities. I think when you look at the growth of where the young population will be in the city, it kind of underscores for me the need to make sure that we have good transport infrastructure in and out of the north. Now, please, team, let me know if I've got that completely wrong, but that seemed to be quite a strong theme. Through feedback? Yeah. Councillors, any questions? Councillor O'Neill.
Thanks, Chair. I think Abby was right about the marketing, and I hope we get it right. But just wondering, I know we'll be pushing out to high schools and places like that, but don't forget, you know, some of the volunteer organisations like Hubble GC, that actually their main aim is to get, you know, information out to the young, to the youth. So I hope that's on the agenda.
Thanks, Councillor Forster. And just to add to that, I think when Study Gold Coast presented to us yesterday, they talked about the TAFE and the number of people there, plus the 100 RTOs that are attached to that. So potentially going out through Study Gold Coast too is going to connect us with all of those and make it far more diverse, especially for people who are coming to the city to study, to actually start being involved in the city.
Through the chair, part of our process from here is to socialise this program with key stakeholders like Study Gold Coast so they thoroughly understand the opportunities presented through the plan.
Director, just for the benefit of everyone in the room, so today we're being asked to endorse a program and not a plan, which is somewhat of a change in the way that these activities are endorsed and delivered in the city. Could you just talk us through about how this is fit for purpose from a new governance perspective?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, as you know, there's a hierarchy of nomenclature around activities and the way forward on all range of issues. So at the top we have a strategy providing the broadest of directions. Below that we have a plan. So what is the plan that we can group like activities to achieve the strategic outcomes. But under that is where the rubber hits the road, and that's where these sort of documents really are. So a program is a collection of discrete activities and activities that complement each other, forming part of a plan and answering to the strategy. So this is really the meat on the bones where all of those broader strategic outcomes that we talk about many times about the livability here on the Gold Coast are concerned. So this particular focus of this program of activities as it relates to those strategies around vibrant and livable communities is encapsulated in this document.
And a discussion that we had in the preparation of this plan really made the point that the outcomes of this program needed strong and ferocious alignment with everything above all the way to the city plan.
Indeed, that is the case, Chair. So we've taken great pains through this process to talk to our colleagues in other areas of council, make sure that we are hitting the mark. It's not a siloed approach, it's very much an engaged approach with all different council areas, and to make sure that, very good way of portraying it, Councillor Vorster, ferocious alignment up and sideways across the governance spectrum.
Questions? I'm happy to move the item. Well, Councillor Belden-Lumsden as our resident millennial, I'll just scrape in there. Would you like to move this item? Okay, well, would someone like to move it? Councillor Tozer? Well, I was ceding to Councillor Belden-Lumsden there, but...
there was a time when you were the youngest, and I remember.
I was.
Happy 30th birthday.
Classic, doesn't feel like 8 years ago. So for clarity, we'll go with Councillor Belden-Lumsden and Councillor Tozer to second. Councillors, any speakers against? Councillor Belden-Lumsden, would you like to speak?
Chair, I think it's been summed up very well that youth are very important to the city. The city's going to continue to grow, and the program's looking to continue to engage with young people moving forward and make it a good place to live for people from all walks of life, all demographics and all age groups.
Happy days.
At the very least, we should thank the staff for their hard work.
Yes, of course, given that. And we're all young at heart, We're all now political prime as well. To Kim, Brooke and Kerry, thank you so much for being part of this program, really shepherding it internally. I know it hasn't been very easy because our business across each directorate has so many touch points with young people. So to bring that together into one program, while the way we look at programs and plans have changed, has not been easy. Appreciate the way that you've engaged with young people, and Director, to bring it all to a head, thank you as well. Councillors, I'll put that to a vote. All those in favour? All those against? That is carried unanimously. Happy days. All right, Councillor Tozer, you pest. Would you like to move the item for the purposes of talking to it, or did you have some questions?
No, I suppose I just wanted there to be a bit of a discussion about some of the matters in here because of the level of queries I get about a variety of undeclared pests.
Sure.
And I thought this might be the right opportunity to do
Absolutely.
that, just so there's a bit of a public record of that conversation. So if you don't mind me asking a few questions, I actually prefer not to move it at the moment.
Okay, no worries. So, Ian and Joe, you're going to be fielding some questions, and we'll begin with Councillor Tozer.
So, Councillor Forster, over a number of months, almost years now, Ian and the team have fielded probably an almost never-ending number of queries about things like feral deer, and just even on the TV, just in the last 24 hours, I know that you've fielded some queries about feral deer. I'm really encouraged.
I had no idea.
You had no idea, yeah. It is definitely something that is, at least anecdotally, increasing the number of reports in Advancetown in the western suburbs, and with a news report last night in a suburban Nerang house of deer in the front yard. It's clearly something that's interesting. I wanted to mention today that I feel very confident, whilst that feral deer are not mentioned in this biosecurity report, that Alton and his team through the Natural Areas Management Unit are trying to work on a multi-agency kind of approach. And I didn't want this this biosecurity program to pass without at least having there being a public record of that being something that's still front of mind for us. It looks like those sorts of pests aren't mentioned in the report. Maybe you could just, if it's okay, just help the community understand a little bit about why pests like deer aren't really incorporated into this report.
Great question, and I'm just going to, while you're responding to that, could you please add red fire ants and tilapia in your response? Thank you.
The Chair. So, despite there's a bit of misconception there. Feral deer, while aren't specifically mentioned, or fire ants or tilapia in the programs, they are covered by the surveillance program, as in we are able to undertake surveillance to identify where deer are in the city, and obviously engage with landholders through education programs to improve the management by private landholders. Fire ants, we work heavily with the state. They are responsible for managing fire ants, so council has responsibility for specific invasive species, feral deer being one of those. Tilapia and red imported fire ants are the responsibility of the state to ensure compliance. Council has a role just to manage those species on our own land. So with both of those programs, they're run by the state for fire ants and tilapia. We support them heavily through our community engagement for our Pest Fishing Classic that's held in November each year, and councillors would note that this year that event will be held citywide, so we're looking for a really good response there. And the fire ants, we're currently in our first year of assisting the program in a collaborative agreement to treat fire ants that are impacting city assets, sports fields and playgrounds, etc.
Yeah, so I'll just follow up on that question, just so the public can really get a good capture on that. There are two programs we're looking at today. One is the enforcement action, the action, and you mentioned just now that surveillance, so things like deer, and you've touched on a few others you just mentioned before, are in a surveillance program. So part of this program is us acting on private and public land because of certain legislative frameworks that exist, and then part of it is us watching pests in areas of the city. Have I read that correctly? And then that's the surveillance program.
Through the Chair, just clarify that. The two programs, the first program is the prevention and control, which identifies and lists and names a number of species that are high risk to the city. The program authorisation the council will approve is enabling our officers to undertake additional actions to what we do under the second program, which is the surveillance program. The prevention and control allows officers to actually physically remove those listed species from people's land because of the risks they pose. The surveillance is a more of a long-term strategic approach. It covers all of the invasive species, and we work heavily with landholders and sometimes for quite extended periods of time to ensure that we get the outcome that the city requires there.
Yeah, that's awesome, that clears it up. I think sometimes when people see this sort of report, and in a couple of days, someone from the newspaper puts something in the paper, they don't quite understand that council cannot or does not intervene on private land except if the pest species is listed in the first report, and we don't intervene necessarily if it's in the second report. Is that correct?
No, it's the level of action that we take is the difference between the two. The second one, we still do work with private landholders. It is along more of an engagement and education, and it's not so much the physical removal. That's the main difference between the two programs. Is the first one allows us to take action on the owner's behalf. The second one, we work with the landholder to take the action.
Yeah, and I get that. I think that the challenge is that with small pest species or weed species that meet that criteria, it's quite easy to work with a landholder and give them advice about how to get rid of a pest weed. Reality is there's poisons that you can get that are appropriate and proper for private properties. What is quite difficult is when there is a 300 kilo deer in your front yard. Like managing that pest as a member of the public is really quite difficult. It also is intellectually difficult to fathom that the council can't help me with that. And whilst I appreciate today we can't really address that, I wanted there to be a public record of us addressing it because it is actually really important. In suburbs like Broadbeach, I don't imagine there's lots of deer. I can't even recall there ever been one. It's a very busy suburb. But in places like Advancedtown, we've got herds of large deer coming in and people's expectation is that council can do something, and the reality is under this legislation it appears that we actually don't do something. It is a private property holder's responsibility to manage that pest on their own property. Am I reading that correctly?
Through the chair, yes, that's correct.
Right, excellent.
Those good old general biosecurity obligations, huh? Yeah. Well, all right. Yeah, and I get really frustrated because I have large open areas that are privately owned, and waterborne weeds, for example, can flow from stormwater drains linked to ponds and lakes. And
they don't recognise property boundaries.
Exactly.
So, I mean,
and then the residents who are affected by this upstream biosecurity hazard then want to rip me to shreds because we're not intervening.
Yeah, in a much less heightened issue, a week wouldn't go by where I don't get a complaint about giant devil's fig or African tulip. Yeah, and I appreciate this, but the reality is that they're not, as I understand, they're not actually declared pests. And whilst we can watch them and whilst we can monitor them, we actually have to go through what is a difficult process where I would love to see the arborist to be able to go just chop those things down.
And sorry, and Pauline, I definitely will come to you. I just want to pick up on the African tulips. So, I mean, I hate the things. Beautiful ornamental street tree, but they're just so prejudicial to our native bee population. I caught wind a little while ago that we were funding some research through Griffith University looking at the impact of African tulips and Cadagis, I think they're Cadagis, the hybridised kind of eucalypt type thing, on native bee populations so that we could then form up a policy or an approach to the removal of those trees. I don't need an answer now, but I'd be interested to see whether that project ever proceeded and if it did, what the outcomes were. Because I often get people who are very concerned about African tulips and the damage to native bees, and I've been out with them and we've pulled the flowers apart and you can see the native bees trapped in the nectar. It's very distressing.
Yeah, I mean, African tulip is a great example of something that isn't on as far as I know, it's not on a declared plant list or we're not meant to go and, we're not required under the legislation to go and remove them. Oh, could you clarify for us?
Through the chair, African tulip trees are listed under the legislation. So when the general biosecurity obligation, council rates the risk of those trees and in some situations have active programs in place for their removal and replacement.
Gosh, that is actually really good news that I wasn't aware of. Could you tell me what a councillor could do if they have a complaint about African tulip tree? Where should they send it?
CR, mate.
Through the chair, you should follow the policy for removal of trees on council land.
No, not on council land.
Oh no, we can't intervene on.
Right, so we can't send an enforcement notice to someone to have their African tulip tree removed.
Through the chair, because they're a lower risk in those situations, our resources are directed at higher risk species like the floating aquatic weeds mentioned earlier.
Right, okay, so that's the challenge there. Yeah, okay.
I'm just reading the fact sheet from the state government on this. At a local level, each local government must have a biosecurity plan that covers invasive plants in its area. This plan may include actions to be taken on African tulip trees. Some of these actions may be required under local laws. That's interesting. Seems as though there's a bit of flexibility, but I mean, a local law, I would assume, could attach to private property. Yeah.
Through the chair, the approach council approved with our biosecurity plan was not to list species under a local law. However, African tulip trees, as an example, within the biosecurity plan, have been given a management category of asset protection. So where those trees are damaging public infrastructure on public land, they're rated for removal.
Around safety rather than biosecurity risk.
So is native bee pollination a community benefit?
Well, so Councillor Tozer, to that point, I'd be very interested to see whether that Griffith University partnership actually progressed, because that would establish either way. Yeah,
that'd be great.
So I think that we'll wait for that one. Councillor Young.
Thank you, Chair, and through you, and because you raised the fire ant issue, if there is fire ants found within the city, should we as a councillor be advised? Because I was at a school P&C meeting last night and they were trying to ask for some feedback on the fire ants that have already been treated at the back of their school and with a couple of nests, and then...
Which school was that, Councillor Young?
Miami State Primary School, which backs onto Pizzey Park, which to me is a huge risk. So they've had apparently 2 nests found. They brought in the dogs and all that. So I imagine it's not our dogs, but dogs are brought in, identified where they were treated and treated well. But I knew nothing about it until I was faced with 15 odd parents yesterday evening at the P&C. So maybe you're not aware either. I don't know, but and that backs on to the pine part of our Pizzey Park, which is our 60-hectare sporting ground, and this is a school that's got 2 nests.
Councillor, you should be made aware, so we will address that for all of you and make sure that you're informed if we find any fire ant infestations. That will happen.
Because I would have sought advice as to what
should have happened.
Yeah. And in a P&C room you can get some very volatile people, so I appreciate that. Thank you.
Councillor Young, absolutely. Thank you for raising that. We need to request that the state government be a little bit more proactive in terms of their communication. I had an instance where some fire ants had come to Robina. Councillor Hamilton, then I'll come to you, Councillor Gates, had come to Robina, and they had erected some signs in the road reserve saying, you know, fire ants have been spotted here. The media had gone to Biosecurity Queensland, because there was some stuff on social media about the fire ants, and Biosecurity would not reveal the location of the infestations for some weird privacy reason, but they had put signs in the ground advising motorists of the location of the infestation. So yeah, I think that information asymmetry is actually quite troublesome, and if we knew, then we are better positioned to reach into a community to say, hey, be alert for some spillover infestations. Yeah, but they're not forthcoming. Councillor Hamilton and Councillor Gates.
Mr Chair, just quick, without being familiar with where Councillor Young is referring to, but was that treatment that occurred on city land?
It's occurring on the school land, so on state government land, but it backs onto our 60-hectare park. So it's only a metal fence that divides where these nests were found. Apparently, very, very early treatment, not very advanced or anything like that, but treated, and they're bringing the dogs back. I think it's either next week or the week after, and then there may be a further treatment. But I actually felt like a deer in the headlights last night at the meeting. Sorry.
That's disappointing to hear, Mr Chair, but I just wanted to make the point that when the city does treatment on city land, in every circumstance I have been made aware very early on, and the communication that our officers do, especially with sporting clubs around it, has been fantastic. We've had 4 or 5 sports fields in my division in the last few weeks have major fire ant infestations, and officers have done a great job with the communication. So that sounds like it's our state colleagues need to be a little bit more open to helping us there. But that is a big concern, because if they get into Pizzey Park, it's one thing in an open sports field. Pizzey Park has got all other kinds of issues in it to deal with.
Yeah, and I remember years ago I did a presser when the fire ant thing was kind of flaring up, excuse the pun, for the first time at Burleigh Headland. And I said at the time, because our projections were that by 2024, fire ants would arrive in Burleigh. And the state kind of laughed at that, derided it for the comment. But if they've arrived at Miami State School in 2023, I think our worst fears are being realised. And I think, was it the Ormo, is it Bulldogs?
It was that same time. I think you might, the big ant on Burleigh Hill, as the front page of the bulletin.
Classic. It is concerning.
Complete and utter inaction from the state government to do anything serious in our city.
We're not making an anthill out of the thing. But anyway, Councillor Gates.
Well, Chairman, I was just really going to say exactly what Councillor Hamill has said, because they've also been at Viney Park and Coomera Sports Park in recent weeks, and I couldn't praise highly enough the efforts of officers, not only in bringing it to my attention, but to the wider community as well, and direct liaison with the sports clubs that were affected. So I can only imagine that officers were not aware, because it wasn't our land, and that if there's an outbreak on state land, perhaps they keep it secret while they do the treatment. But for years we've been suggesting that their treatments be expanded to actually halt the progress to the south, and we just haven't seen that occur. So it's very disappointing, given that fire ants can actually climb up the legs of a cot into a baby's bassinet. And I read recently, when the officers alerted me to the problem in Division 3, that they usually attack your body at the one time with about 100 fire ants over a person's body, and they all somehow manage to attack at once. So they're very frightening, and I think we probably underestimate the impact of fire ants, and I think quite clearly the state has, because I remember one of our former managers in Parks and Gardens saying it was the one thing that kept him awake at night.
The terrifying thing about them is they can be fatal, as you say, but they can effectively swim. So they will build a raft out of themselves, and some will sacrifice themselves at the bottom of the raft to travel over water. They can fly and obviously travel along the ground as well. So, we have to beat them in the skies, in the sea, and on land.
In the trenches.
In the trenches. The other worry with a fire ant is that they do like sand. And when you think about our beaches and dunes and all the rest like that, to have our foreshores compromised by fire ants, I think risks a lot of reputational damage for us from a tourism point of view. As you know, we've all been banging on for so long about the fire ants. It's disappointing the state hasn't taken this on board. Councillor Young.
Through the chair, I appreciate Councillor Hamill and Councillor Gates' feedback. It wasn't having a go at the officers. I probably told you something you didn't know. But it was just quite interesting that it came out at a school meeting just last night, and we're having this conversation today, because it's obviously something that I know the people at the meeting were all concerned, but as to how much information's been put out there in the community, I wouldn't know. And with the significance of Pizzey Park to that part of the city, I think it's quite possible we need to follow through with it.
So through the chair, the message is really clear to us that we will increase the liaison with our state colleagues on this and really press them hard for any information on emerging places on the Gold Coast, and try and get that information out to you in the community as soon as we can.
I think let's pick the mood. Let's add a 3. Let's add a 3. What do you say, colleagues? We want the state government to improve its disclosure of fire incidents to the local government, especially where infestations are on state land. Yeah? What do we think? Yeah? All right, happy days. So let's add a 3. That the CEO of the Mayor, the CEO to Biosecurity Queensland, all right, that the Chief Executive Officer write to Biosecurity Queensland seeking an undertaking that disclosures of imported red fire ant infestations on state land will be made to the relevant local government in a timely manner. Councillor Young, you happy with that 3? And if we could turn imported red fire ant into a proper noun, just capitalise each of those letters. Councillor Tozer.
Thank you. My last question through you to perhaps to Alton is that every year we are required to adopt this resolution, and it occurs to me that just in some of the conversation today that there's obviously emerging threats that come out from time to time that draw on council resources and perhaps sometimes draw those council resources away from other pest management activity at times. Whilst it's not special budget today, are we adequately resourcing this plan to manage those emerging threats? And hearing Councillor Hamill and Councillor Gates and Councillor Young all speak about imported red fire ants, it seems to me that maybe that could be a conversation for special budget at one point.
Through the chair, we had the opportunity yesterday at OPEX. I actually had a couple of new positions in there to address exactly this. So I think that we are adequately resourced.
Okay, awesome. All right, councillors, would someone like to move that?
I'll move it if you like.
Sorry?
I'll move it if you like.
Yeah, Councillor Tozer, seconder. I'm happy to second. Councillor O'Neill, sharing the love. So moved by Councillor Tozer, seconded by Councillor O'Neill. Councillors, were there any further questions on that? Councillor Tozer,
thanks. Well, I appreciate the item was a start item, but I think it raised some important issues by bringing it out into the open. And I know how hard, having been on the Regional Mosquito Management Group and on the Darling Down Moreton Rabbit Board over the last decade at different times, I know how hard the pest management team do work to try to deal with emerging threats and their obligations. I do actually think they're probably under-resourced, and I'm very encouraged to hear that there's a couple of extra headcount coming into that, particularly to manage some of these imported red fire ant obligations we have. I would love to see some of our action on some of those more community-aware weeds and pests become. I think we do need to come up with solutions. I think we should be a community leader in that space, and I'll be encouraged to see how our multi-agency conversation about rooster deer and other pest deer evolve over the coming months. Thanks.
Let's hope the state has some answers for us. Any speakers against? Councillor Tozer, do you wish to close?
No, that's it.
Awesome. Councillors, I'll put that to a vote. All those in favour? All those against? That is carried. All right, good stuff. Look, councillors, I know the media are hoping to grab the junior councillors, so I thought if it's okay with you, we might adjourn for 10 minutes. Yep. Is that all right?
Yeah.
Awesome. All right, we'll adjourn the meeting until 10:25. Thanks. a list of questions, an order of questions. So Councillor Belden-Lumsden, did you intend to ask some questions? I'm just getting a list, like a speaking order.
Yeah.
So.
In terms of questions, Chair, no, I think the report's pretty comprehensive in terms of the need for further investigations into the project.
Okay.
So I'm pretty comfortable.
All right. So
yeah, Chairman, I did have a question about why the recommendation seeks to consider other options when clearly they have a preferred option. So why would we waste any money at all on investigating options that have obviously been discounted?
So we'll hear from Director Twine, and then if Director Twine hasn't provided a full picture from Councillor Belden-Lumsden's perspective, then we'll come to him to top it up.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for your question, Councillor Gates. They haven't been discounted yet. I guess what we've done is to look at what we think the options are. We've got a preferred one based on two things. Really the need for better movement along the foreshore, combined with a recognition that there isn't a lot of parkland in the suburb. So potentially a reclamation option could provide both. So we haven't, it's only preferred, I guess it's a notionally preferred option at this stage. We need to do further investigation. So we have touched base with our colleagues in Gold Coast Waterways Authority, who have a vital vested interest in anything to do with the foreshore and indeed with reclamation issues. They've given us the in principle approval to consider further what reclamation might look like, but you could have a very large reclamation project or you could have quite a small one. So these are all things which need to be teased out. You can imagine, for example, the issues that might become apparent when we do some further investigation into the first option around traffic flow. So we need to really get on with trying to flesh out what these options are and to come back to you with something that we think is going to be fit for purpose and value for money as an option.
So do we have, could I ask another question, please? Do we have any ballpark figures about the cost of this potential project, and can you tell me where it was scheduled into the proposed capital works program before the divisional allocation brought it forward?
They're very, very high level figures, and they're really just notional ones again, because we haven't done the work to flesh out what these really might cost. But as you would appreciate, reconfiguration of a road is going to be a lot cheaper than reclamation. And because we don't know whether it's going to be a large or small reclamation, depending on the fact we haven't done that investigation yet, it could be a very large figure or it could be smaller. So I hesitate to give you exact figures at this stage, but I'll throw to Tony in terms of the second part of your question about where it sits in the capital works program, because there has been some work on this for a while, hasn't there, Tony, in terms of understanding what the problem is and what the solutions might be and the timing of those solutions.
Thank you, Alton. Through the Chair, so Councillor Gates, there are a couple of projects notionally approved in our 10-year capital works plan. The first one of those is some improvement works for Lenfox Park, which is just inside the 4 years coming in, and further out in our 10-year plan. I'm going to say about 25, 26, maybe 26, 27. There is another project for the Broadwater Way, which is what we call this section of, and so further embellishments into the future. Those amounts at this stage we wouldn't think, so we're getting on with the Lenfox Park upgrades, but depending on the of where these investigations go, we would come back to committee and council with a further costing plan as to which option we chose to proceed with.
And just one more question, Chairman. Is there the possibility of delivering a boardwalk without reclamation? Yes. So will that form part of our future options as well? Because
yes, it will.
from what I can gather I had a recent meeting with Waterways Authority, and whilst they might have given in principle support, I was of the understanding that Department of Agriculture and Fisheries is a referral agent, as is the Department of Environment and Science. And I guess when I read this report, $100,000 to investigate something that I believe there is an existing reluctance to approve is just, ratepayers' money down the gurgler. So I'd be interested in seeing what is possible without reclamation and without road closures. And I mean, it really terrifies me to suggest one weighing of any road in the city, and it was the same in Surfers Paradise recently, without any community consultation whatsoever. So I don't even understand how the $100,000 of investigation into that wouldn't include community consultation, and I think that's always the first step.
Through the chair, you're quite right, Councillor Gates, there are concerns around reclamation, and this money won't be money thrown down the drain, because we're going to consider all of those options, and the boardwalk is a very real option, and it might well be, and I can't preempt the investigations at this stage, but it might well be that we come up with a different preferred option once we've done that work.
Okay, thank you, that's all.
So, in short, and I will come to you, Councillor Belton-Lumsden, but I just want to make sure I understand. So, the $100,000 is required for us to understand what all of the possibilities may be, which are not necessarily options 1, 2 and 3, but could include a 4th or 5th option, which is surfaced during the investigation, and that during that investigation there may be some community engagement to understand appetite for any ultimately preferred outcome. Is that right, or am I being too generous?
Thank you for the question, Chair. It certainly will consider all options. So, we're not going to be restrained to one or another. We're going to look for what we think ultimately will be the best option. I'll throw to Tony for the community consultation component of that question.
Thank you, Director. Yes, to answer your question, Chair, there has been some preliminary community consultation where the reclamation option was the most popular, as you can imagine, that area. And no, not the road. I suppose, Councillor, what we're coming to you with today is this is a transformational project potentially, and I suppose that's where we're coming up with our preferred option currently. If you look at the Labrador area, there is an absolute deficiency of open space currently, and we're looking at a huge population growth into the future. So we are thinking 20 and 30 years ahead here about what could be a transformational project for this area. The Gold Coast Waterways Authority, in regards to the in-principle support that the Director refers to, says, with regards to reclamation, the clause they have in their policy is about significant community benefit. And when I met with the CEO, his comment was, we need to make sure before we could even look at reclamation that you have investigated all options prior to. And we need to do that robustly. So as the Director says, we will look at the closing of the create extra open space and allow us to do what we want to do. And we will look at the sorry, what do you call it? The path option, the boardwalk option as well. And this is what this allows us to do. But if we decided as a council that land reclamation is transformational for the future for this city, we can't go back to Gold Coast Waterways and suggest that without having gone through this piece of work in the first instance.
So, Chairman, I understand that, because the only chance of reclamation is if there is no other feasible option. So quite clearly, if you put the pretty pictures in front of the community and say, would you like this, or would you like that, or would you like to close the traffic to traffic one way, they'll choose reclamation every step of the way. I just don't think that there's a willingness for that to occur, which is why I was concerned personally about the allocation of another $100,000, because it's not the feedback that I have personally had. And I think many of us have met recently with the new CEO of the Waterways Authority. And anyway, I'll watch this space. Thank you.
And thanks for the question, Councillor Gates. It surfaced some interesting feedback there from Tony. So I just want to make sure everyone is heard. So I've got Councillor Gates done. We're going to go to Councillor Belden-Lumsden, then to Councillor Hamill, and then to Councillor O'Neill, and then to Councillor Caldwell. All right, Councillor Belden-Lumsden.
Thanks, Chair. Just reflecting on what Councillor Gates said, just is 100 grand enough to make sure that this investigation is done with appropriate levels of community consultation as well?
Through the chair, we've allocated $100,000. We've engaged a consultant that helped us with the reclamation efforts at the Broadwater Parklands, and they gave us a number of different bodies of work that and costed bodies of work in order to deliver these investigations, and they include some traffic modelling, coastal processes studies, engineering studies, hydraulic impact assessments, all these discrete bodies of work, and we sort of tabulated them up and came to around $100,000. So, short of us testing the market prior, we wouldn't have those, but we're comfortable that that's sort of what we need. Yep.
And sorry, just on just to preempt Councillor Gates's question, could we just quickly open up a discussion or clarify the genesis of this project? Because I either recall a general business item or a line item in the budget that we endorsed, which funded the preliminary work.
Through the chair. Yeah, correct. The councillor brought a local area works allocation to conduct some concept planning efforts along this stretch in response to the future LGIP allocations that are in the budget. So it was, right, there's dots on the map to embellish this area, and the councillor brought forward this effort to, which included some robust community consultation on what options could be delivered in this area.
So there's a dot on the map with LGIP 1, is there? LGIP 2. So in anticipation of LGIP 2, which contains this dot, right, the one that we're about to sign off on next round,
yep.
Or this round, I should say.
Correct.
There's a dot. In anticipation of that, there was a local area works allocation to then plan out what that dot could deliver. Council voted on that allocation to develop the concept plans, and what's being returned to us is a look at those concept plans and then a way forward.
Through the chair, correct.
Can I just ask, seeing as we have not yet endorsed the LGIP 2, what would happen if we did not endorse LGIP 2 or the state did not endorse LGIP 2? Where would that leave this concept plan and potential funding?
Through the chair, if that's not endorsed, then we would certainly pause our efforts. We would not progress the investigation of that.
So, just so I've got it clear in my head, this project is being countenanced then, being in LGIP 2 because of population growth and a need for us to invest in embellishments and additional open space to meet our desired standards of service in this area. Is that correct?
Through the chair, that's one element. There's obviously still the active travel element, which is a acute issue currently that needs to be resolved.
And further to that, Chair and councillors, the boardwalk structure which is in place at the moment is deteriorating and it's approaching its end of life. So you'll see pictures in the report even, and I draw your attention particularly to page 87, and you can see the standard of the facility with a telephone pole right in the middle of the walkway, which is not really a good outcome that I don't think anyone would like to see for the community in that area.
Okay. Sorry, Councillor Belden-Lumsden, please continue.
Thanks, Chair. Through you, just a bit of...
Said?
Yeah, sure.
When he said he'd allocated $100,000, did you really mean that you've suggested $100,000? You haven't allocated any other funding towards this?
It's a proposal in the current or the draft 23-24 budget. It's a new.
So is there an allocation proposed in that budget?
In the draft
for
budget.
$100,000?
Correct. Yeah.
And is that this $100,000?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. So it's a recommendation for $100,000?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yep.
I get it.
Over and above what's already been expended as a consequence of the general business item or the local area works allocation. Yep. Sorry, Councillor Belden-Lumsden, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Just, I guess, further background to that, obviously following the 2020 elections, the Mayor met with all councillors at that point, asked about projects in mind at that time. That time I spoke to the Mayor basically about the photo on page 87, that the Labrador foreshore, that whole 1.7 kilometre section has footpaths that are really well utilised, but not up to any kind of modern standards. It's probably the only coastal section of footpath, be it Broadwater, beach, anything like that, that doesn't have this Oceanway standard footpath. It's about 2 metres wide, telegraph poles, electrical boxes, all those kind of things. And I said to the Mayor at the time, this really needs to be addressed just for safety issues. It still has all the electric skateboards and scooters and all the other safety hazards that people raise from everywhere else in the city, except it's on a really narrow path with immovable obstacles in the way of them. The Mayor suggested that will cost a fair bit of money. What you should do is do a master plan for the whole area that encompasses not just footpath, but also future needs of the area. So at that point, spoke to the then Lifestyle Communities Director and said, I'm happy to put money from local area works towards it. Spoke to the then Transport Infrastructure Director, who understood there was an active transport need. They contributed funds from their bucket as well as the local area funds, and I think there was a contribution of some degree from Parks at the time as well to encompass the investigations that have already been done. So it was a combination between two directorates and local area funds to get to this point. Community feedback's been very supportive. They understand that there's need in terms of active transport, in terms of open space. I think page 86 indicates there's going to be 23 hectares of open space deficit in Labrador alone moving forward. So this isn't going to rectify 23 hectares of open space, but goes a long way to address the needs that are there.
Thanks for that question.
Sorry, Chair, that was not meant to be a question, just I guess a bit more clarity in terms of the background of how we got to this report.
No, thanks. Councillor Hamill.
Chair, I feel through conversation my questions probably got tangled up in it, so I'm happy to pass for now.
Seceded. Councillor O'Neill.
Thanks, Chair. Just a couple of questions. I mean, the Gold Coast Waterways is probably an integral part about whether we go forward with reclamation, but if we got a sort of a time frame that we could get some sort of answer from them, because I mean, I think the boardwalk, love the look of the boardwalk, and I think that my second question is, if we do deliver a boardwalk or the whole project, would we be eligible for state government funding with active travel?
Through the Chair, the idea, I guess, of the proposal for the funding in the budget in 23-24 is to undertake the investigations and finalise them within the financial year. And you're quite right, if there's a boardwalk or if there's any sort of opportunity for funding, we will be pursuing that funding through state and federal government sources.
Councillor Caldwell.
No, same with Councillor Hamill, my questions were sort of entangled in some of the other discussions. So.
Okay, Councillor Belden-Lumsden.
Just had a question actually on funding and availability from other levels. Is there funding available that boardwalking options wouldn't be eligible for, but things like reclamation would, in terms of funding sources, be it charges through rates and that kind of thing? I don't know the terms for all of them, but my understanding is there's certain things such as boardwalks that could only be funded from the general rate, but other open space acquisition opportunities can be funded through other sources. If that's correct or not, through the Chair?
Through the Chair, we point out in the report actually that the reclamation option is the only option that can utilise the rec space separate charge as a source of funding, because it's creating land essentially, and that's one of the reasons why we're preferring it, because it brings in another source of funding to deliver this project.
Councillors, I just want to... Did everybody receive that correspondence from the Mayor last night? You'd recall in the Mayor's correspondence he asked for his views to be taken into consideration. So I think the most appropriate way to do that is to table the Mayor's email, which I've provided as a PDF to the minute team. Do we need to expressly include that, or having thrown it up on the screen, can it be included in the minutes? Yeah.
We can include that in the minutes, Chair.
All right, happy days. All right, do we need to explicitly say that, or you'll just include it?
We can include it in the minutes.
Okay, all right, happy days. Just want to make sure we're closing that loop. The Mayor did send his apologies. He had some other obligations, but I know he wanted to be here today, and by including it in the minutes, we've made sure that his views have been captured. Councillors, any further questions? All right. So I'm in your hands. Does someone have a motion to move? Ryan.
Thanks, Chair. No, I'm happy to move the motion as it is.
And I'll second that. Seconded by Councillor Tozer. Councillor Belton-Lumsden, did you have some further comments to add?
Chair, just the project, as I think the photos in the report clearly outline, there is a significant need for revitalisation for the Labrador foreshore, not just for the needs now, but also the suburb as it grows into the future. At the moment, basically in that photo on page 87, there's currently a plaque there that says it was proudly opened by Mayor Ray Stevens in the early 90s. It looks much the same as it did at that time, considering the suburb's more than doubled in population since then. I don't know who that person was, sorry. But it was proudly open at that stage. The suburb's grown hugely. We've been progressing with investigations, calling the area a targeted growth area, so that it anticipates a lot more growth for the area into the future. It's important that we meet current needs infrastructure-wise, but also we plan into the future and look to address issues that are quite foreseeable, that there's going to be more people there. There's only going to be more need for active transport options as the roads get more congested, that there's going to be more need for open space as more people live there. And given where it is, beautiful, the Broadwater is a beautiful place on the Gold Coast. People travel from all around to go there. We want to make sure we're addressing visitors to the Gold Coast as well.
Thank you for those opening remarks. Councillors, were there any speakers against? Councillor Gates?
Well, not necessarily against. I'm going to support today's recommendation at this point in time. I'll be interested to hear from the Mayor at full council, but I don't believe this project will be delivered. I think the costs will be astronomical, and I just don't see that it's going to slot into a program anytime soon, given the other requirements right across the city. So I kind of feel like it's creating an expectation that won't be delivered, and that the next report will probably put a nail in it, but let's see the next report and make a decision then about possibilities and timeframe.
Thank you for that contribution. Councillors, any speakers for the motion? Councillor Caldwell.
Thanks, Mr Chair. I am speaking in support of the motion, and as the councillor for the adjacent area, which is just immediately to the north of Brisbane Road, there is actually a lot of commonality of the use of this particular foreshore area between residents of both Division 4 and 7. The photos within the report clearly illustrate the deficiencies of the current arrangements for active transport, recreation and the general enjoyment of our beautiful Broadwater area. And I actually think that we can and should do better for the residents who are living in and around that area and who use that particular stretch of Marine Parade. I'm comforted that the approach that's been previously taken by the Gold Coast Waterways authorities in and around decisions on Broadwater parklands would suggest to me that they are open with a sensible discussion to reclamation, and I think I'm actually a little bit bewildered that we would hang our hat too firmly on a concern that of the words that were referred to where it says that there must be no feasible alternative, because that's only one of the considerations. Then it goes on to talk about what the positives are and the other considerations in achieving the overall outcomes of what the Waterways Authority is established to achieve. So I actually give an enormous amount of credit to the local councillor for having brought this forward, because it actually gives us a point of proper planning for an item that we know is projected to be an LGIP expense in the future. And so we have a realistic expectation of how much of that can be funded by LGIP, whether we need to trim our cloth a little bit from maybe the ultimate project so as to achieve the delivery. And I think we can also look at a mix of different alternatives for reclamation and perhaps suspended boardwalk along the whole stretch, and that might meet the needs of the entire project to make it affordable and deliverable and earn the support of the Waterways Authority. So I think the Mayor and Councillor Baldwin-Lumsden were on the right track with actually designing a proper master plan so we know what we've got to play with, and I very much look forward to the next round of work being delivered to Council for consideration. Thank you. Sorry?
Who knows where it'll benefit a significant number of people in the local government area. Great. Oh, it's in the Gold Coast. I'd love to enjoy a stroll past there.
Love it.
It's good. Maybe type my tinny. It's good. Too soon? Too soon?
Too soon.
Councillors, any speakers against? Councillor Baldwin-Lumsden, did you wish to close?
Thank you, Chair. Just as I said, the area is, I think, well overdue for some attention. That the suburb residents there have been very patient. The need's definitely there. As the report outlines, there's almost 500,000 people that use the footpath in its current state. The demand is much greater than that. It'd be much welcome for the area. It complements the works that we've seen in most other coastal parts of the Gold Coast, and understand that there'll be need to be referrals to other agencies and authorities and whatnot, but if we don't undertake any further work, we actually don't have anything to present to them to consider. So it is important that we continue to investigate, come forward with a more substantiated plan, and then we can look to get any ticks or approvals and things we need, and can look to deliver for residents of the Gold Coast.
Happy days. Thank you for that, Councillor. Debate having closed, I'll put that to a vote. All those in favour? All those against? That is carried. Councillors, I know it's been a long morning. Just have a general business item to unstitch an earlier general business item. It reads, the Council acknowledges the completion of the My Neat Street trial program and the residents of the recognised streets, that the program is not continued and the objectives of city pride and community safety are incorporated into other city initiatives, that a further report regarding the program is no longer required. Second, moved by Councillor Vorster, seconded by Councillor Gates. All those in favour? All those against? That is carried. Any other general business items? No. Meeting closed at 11 past 11.